Hey there, extraordinary thinkers. Travathan here. I want to talk about something today that, of course, as you know how I do this, if you've been here before, people ask me questions, mostly on social media or through phone call or something, and I address it here a lot of the times because it's something that lots of people are wondering about. This channel is all about extraordinary thinking. If you haven't been here before, be sure that when this video is over, you go back and look at some of the other ones. Extraordinary thinking is way different from ordinary thinking, which is the common thinking of the day that doesn't work that great. So I've been doing this for over 40 years. So I'm going to talk today about a question that came up in regards to being a victim. And I could relate to this question a lot because I've had situations in my own life, just like the person who was talking to me, where I felt like I was kind of victimized. That was before I realized what that really meant. This person who was talking to me has had some issues lately where she felt kind of victimized, but she didn't really know how to kind of sort it all out in her mind. And here's what I want to say about this that's really important, and I hope you take it to heart. We only have, in my mind, two choices. We get to be victims, or we get to be volunteers. Now, to me, there's like the Grand Canyon between these things. And people would even argue with me, and you may be one of them, and say, but wait a minute, Lee, you know, bad things happen to people. Really horrible things happen to me, and they're victims. Yes and no. Yes, in one way you can say that. But the bottom line here is, no matter what happens to you, no matter what that is, it's how you deal with it that really makes you either a victim or a volunteer. So I was thinking about this when this question was asked of me. I was thinking about Viktor Frankl and his time in German Nazi concentration camps. He chose not to be a victim. Now, think about that. If somebody like Viktor Frankl in a concentration camp could decide to not play the victim role, what can you do? And because he didn't play that role, he wasn't treated as such. He was treated differently from the other prisoners. Interesting. You might want to read his book. I'll put a link to it below. There's another book, As a Man Thinketh, So He Is. I'll put a link to that below, and it addresses something similar in that if you believe yourself to be a victim, not only do you draw more things to you to validate that idea, but you also put yourself in a position to literally fall into it, like fall into a pit. So I spoke to this woman and I found out what had happened to her. Now, if I looked at it from the point of view of ordinary thinking, I would be saying, yeah, you know what? Heck yeah. She was a victim. Somebody betrayed her, and she was a victim of this person. But when she and I discussed this at length, and we really looked at her choices, it all came down to perspective. How do you want to feel in the situation? Because if you've watched my videos before, you know I'm very big on keeping your vibration high. Big, 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 big on that. So she can't be a victim and keep her vibration high, can she? She's working on a manifestation. What's going to happen? She's going to stop the manifestation. Every time, that's the way it goes. You can't be a victim and manifest anything other than more victim stuff. Because your energy is going to follow your thought. And it's going to attract to you and draw to you the things you think about the most. We know this stuff. But do we apply it? That's really the question. So we talked about this, and I think she got in a much better, as she said, headspace. And then she realized, no, wait a minute, I'm not going to give this person that power over me. And I went, bingo. There it is. Scoop, there it is. That's it. There's the golden nugget. So she felt much better after we had our communication. And it made me think, you guys know I tell little stories on here about things that happened to me that relate to the video. It made me think about something that happened to me about a year ago. Kind of as COVID was starting. I had come out of retirement. I have worked as a therapist and a life coach for over 40 years. And I had tried retirement. It doesn't work for me at this point, but I attempted it and it didn't work for me. So I decided to come out of retirement, and I needed to redo some courses, recertify in some things, and do some stuff like that. So I spent like a couple months actually doing the coursework and testing out and doing all the stuff that I needed to do. And then I got this idea. The work that I do is very similar in some ways, not in many ways, but in some ways, to the work that Bob Proctor has been doing all of his life. And I thought, maybe I could connect somehow. So I ended up connecting with his organization, and I got sold on this idea that I could be a coach for them. And at the time I thought, that's fine. You know, it's very similar to my own work. The thing is that I spent a lot of money, like $30,000 to do this. And there were no guarantees, of course. There never are in things like that. And there was also no refunds. So if I found out this was just a really terrible fit for me, there was nothing I could do about it. The money was gone. And so I spent the money and I got working on this, and I started really communicating with people and really doing everything I could to be supportive of people who really wanted to leap ahead. And guess what? They didn't want to do Bob's stuff. They wanted to do my stuff. I go way deep, and they wanted to go way deep. They wanted to really move forward, not just manifest things, but really like get to know who they are and really understand it and all of that. And I work with 20 basic building blocks of extraordinary thinking that are the opposite of ordinary thinking. And I realized that most people don't know those things, and they wanted to know those things. So the program I was doing with Bob wasn't going to teach any of that. And the program I was doing with the Proctor organization is a great program. Wasn't a good fit for me though. So I was just out the money, and no one returns my calls, you know, that kind of thing. So I had to really stop and think about this and go, wow, you know, what's happened here? Because I definitely took a hit. Like, it even knocked me off emotionally for a bit. It's like, wow, okay. Ooh. The thing is I had to reorganize my thinking. First, I had to look at what I did and ask myself, why did I do that? Once I understood why I did that, I realized I hadn't really thought this through. I didn't get to see the program before I bought into it. Had I seen the program, I wouldn't have done it because it was so much like my own, except it didn't go deep enough for what I needed. So I would have realized that, would have changed things a lot. And I thought, well, okay, I could look at that as I was taken advantage of. Or I could look at that as I made a really poor choice. And I mean, I was all in on this. If you go back to some of my other videos, yeah, you'll see I was all in on this. And it just kept coming back to me over and over and over and over. But I don't want to do that. I want to do your work. I want to do your work. It's like, okay, universe, I get it. I got the message, okay? Okay. I had to realize that if I thought of it like I was somehow a victim, and this was somehow, you know, kind of a predatory type organization or something of that like, that I could get myself in some really deep spaces that were not good. And I had to rationalize this. Is this something that is unique to me? Well, yeah, because there are people in that organization who are doing, you know, million dollar plus a year and way more. So there's some people that might be doing that a month, but it's for them. So I had to be clear that it wasn't for me. And was the money gone? That was the other question. It would appear, if you look at it from ordinary thinking, it would appear that it was just gone and that I foolishly spent this money, and it had an effect overall in my life in a lot of different areas. It just really made a difference. And I have money, so it's not like I couldn't spend the money. I could. It was just, was I doing it correctly? Well, I started to realize that I can't go out there and tell people that they can manifest anything if I can't manifest another piddly $30,000. That's like, okay, so I made a mistake. It didn't work out for me. I don't get my money back. I can't even get anybody to talk to me. And okay, so I'll just manifest another $30,000. Now you may be going, whoa, she is crazy. But that's what I did. What you focus on expands. So in my mind, I focused on the idea that that money was given back to me and that I didn't have to work for it. It just showed up. And sure enough, that's what happened. It showed up. Didn't have to work for it. It came to me honestly, and I did not have to really do anything special or unique or different or anything. It was just there. But why? One is I stopped thinking myself a victim, because I made a mistake, and I think they made a mistake. I should have been able to see the program before I spent money on it. I didn't get to see that. Had I seen it, yeah, everything would have been different. But it didn't mean that I was a victim. It meant I was a volunteer. I went into this, no one had a gun to my head. You know, I believed that it was going to be great, and that because this work was me doing it, me coaching it, and it was Bob's work, and people are very familiar with Bob because of The Secret and things like that, that it would just be fine. But it wasn't fine. In fact, it's not what people in my realm wanted. And what I had to realize was it wasn't what the universe wanted for me either. Why? Because it was me doing somebody else's work. And I was doing work very similar for 40 years, some of the same concepts and everything, but I do it in a totally different way. And I go way deeper. So it's so important to be aware of whether you see yourself as a victim in any situation or a volunteer. The thought came to mind about the fires that happened in California a couple of years ago. 7 of my friends in the LA area, especially people who lived up around Malibu, lost everything. I mean, everything. And it was very interesting to me. I always consider these people kind of sort of, you know, enlightened type people, just because they've done a lot of work on themselves, and I've seen them do some of that work. They looked at it like, okay, so I get it, so I lost everything. Well, I manifested that, so I'll just manifest again. And they did. And yet, I would see people on TV during those fires, because you know the media loves to play this stuff up and play up the sorrow in it and all that. And there is sorrow in it. There's no getting around that. But it was very interesting to me that people living in the same area that lost everything as well believed their life was over. Like that, they just couldn't even go on. There's just, you know, they just lost everything and it was the most horrible thing that ever happened to them. It's all perspective, isn't it? So I always like to say that we get to be powerful or we get to be pitiful. So when what happened to me, as well as what happened to the woman who started this conversation with me that made me think of this, is either one of us could have looked at it like we were victimized, taken advantage of. And it could look that way. It really could look that way. But it isn't that way. I had to realize that I can manifest anything, and I teach people this, and I've been teaching people this for 40 years. So why would my situation in regards to the choice I made that didn't work for me, why is it different? It's not different. And did it not work for me? In some respects, it really did work for me. Now, granted, there were people who just didn't want to hear about it at all. They wanted to hear about my work. The program that I was doing, I think, is a very good program. I think it's, excuse me, I think it's pretty much all-inclusive, with one element that people weren't dealing with in the situation, and that was just going much deeper into who you are and what you are. And that's a big part of what I do. So, ask yourself, in any situation, are you a victim or are you a volunteer? In my situation, it looked like I was a victim because something was taken from me and there was no way to get it back. Even when it didn't work out, there was no way to get it back. I do caution anyone who decides they want to go into a coaching program that is very expensive, because you're going to get a whole lot of no's before you get any yeses. Make sure you have a good email set up so you're constantly emailing people. I don't do a lot of email. So make sure that you have people teaching you who are not teaching you the kind of things that multi-level marketing organizations do to where you don't have any friends left. And I'm not saying that in a demeaning way. I'm just saying that if someone says, get out your phone and contact everyone on your phone and tell them they got to do this program, you're probably going to lose some friends. Now, I wouldn't do that, but I did see people who did, and they did lose some friends. I saw people who got really burned out. You got to think about this stuff before you make a big investment, and I clearly did not. So that's like a caveat for anyone else. And that doesn't mean that I did something wrong. I just didn't think it through. Okay, so that's what I did that seemed wrong. But in any situation, on any given day, you have an opportunity to look at yourself as a victim or a volunteer. And for me, it's all about thinking makes it so. If you believe yourself to be a victim, you're going to have everything that comes with that, and it's a boatload. And if you believe yourself to be a volunteer, like nobody had a gun to your head, and yeah, you're going to be fine. I thought about something that happened many years ago with a friend of mine, a situation that happened in his family. He had sons that loved to be out on the water in boats, and they here at lakes in Arizona particularly. And they would go out on the boats and they would have their friends come and they would drink a lot and it would be hot and they'd drink more and it'd be hot and they'd drink more. And they, quite often, you know, I was kind of happy they made it back to shore. And there was this one time when they didn't. And one of the sons particularly, I don't know if he had very many bones in his body that weren't broken, and he was really in horrible shape. And his dad called me. We were friends at the time. We are no longer, but we were at the time. And he called me and said, I don't know what to tell him. And I said, well, the goal here is for him to be healed, correct? He says, yes. And I said, okay. So when do you see him next? He goes, in about an hour. I said, I want you to go in there. This kid loved to play Pac-Man games. I want you to go in there and I want you to say to him that it's time to call in the Pac-Man. He's like, what? I said, just bear with me a minute. He knows how the little Pac-Man at the time were very popular, how they worked. I said, I want you to tell him to see the little Pac-Man in his body. And I want you to see them as like little worker bees, and they're going in and they're mending everything. They're fixing everything. Well, this kid did not have a good outcome according to the doctors. He was never going to walk again. He had some brain damage. It was bad, really bad, really, really bad. And his dad told him to do this. And he decided, well, I might as well. And I had said to his dad, give him the choice. He gets to be a victim or he gets to be a volunteer in his own life right now. Now, he could have looked at himself as a victim. Why'd this happen to me? Why me? You know, that kind of thing. But he decided to just go with it. And he called in the little Pac-Man, and I had his dad show him how to visualize and just meditate and see all this work being done and see himself totally healed and up and walking and back to life. That's what happened. He surprised everyone. The brain damage went away. He was up walking pretty quickly, even though it was unheard of. But why? He still attributes it to the Pac-Man. But what I know is he chose not to be a victim. He chose to be a volunteer and to act in his own behalf, in his own life. And there it was. So, thoughts are so powerful, and we all know this. We could watch videos, we have books, it's all over the place. You hear this stuff all the time. But do you take it seriously? Do you apply what you know? We all have a choice every minute of every day. You could hear what happened to me and go, oh boy, she really got taken. And it could seem that way. And for like a hot minute, my husband looked at me and went like, what'd you do? And it wasn't pretty. It's like, I made a really big mistake. But did I? I learned a lesson about me and who I am. And I learned a lesson about my worth and my value. And I learned that I can be fallible, but I can also be incredible. And I learned what works for me and what doesn't work for me. And if it took $30,000 and a whole lot of pain to understand what worked for me and what didn't work for me, then that was a lesson that was worth paying for. If it took $30,000 to learn that people wanted to do work with me based on extraordinary thinking and go to a deeper level, then that was really important for me to know. What I have been able to learn in my life and share with other people has been worth millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars to me. So it has that value for me. I couldn't have gone to school and learned the stuff that I share with others. I did go to school. I didn't learn it there. It wasn't there. So I feel myself to be honored in that journey, and I respect that journey. And as soon as I decided that that money was back in my possession, there it was. There it was. I decided that I needed it. I decided that I was going to just pay that off and be done with it, and boom, there was the money right there. That would not have happened. In fact, things would have not gone my way if I had decided to be a victim. So in any situation, in any day, in any time, whatever you're going through, ask yourself, am I being a victim or am I being a volunteer? Because to be a volunteer is to hold the power. To be a victim is powerless. You don't have any. So just be aware, be attentive, and be good to yourself. If you do make a mistake, like what I did, I could have beaten myself up. And I think there was a moment there where I was doing that because things were not going too good. So it's like, oh man, like, this is bad. And I could have been really in a really worse shape where I was beating myself much worse than I did. But I didn't beat myself up that badly. And when I caught myself, I could recover from that and go, whoa, wait a minute. Wait a minute. But I do caution you. I have coaching programs and I don't charge anything like that. And they're equally as good, I'm sure. And I don't worry about whether people do it or they don't. You know, if someone wants to do it, I work with them. But if I'm not going to ram it down anybody's throat. But there is a value in everything in life, no matter how it turns out for you. There's tremendous value in it. You just have to find it. So I want to leave you with what I leave you with almost all the time, is I want to leave you with the idea that this book would be helpful to you. This is my latest book. I will put the information about it down below. It's called Love Beyond Compare. And it talks to you about some birthrights that most people never even know about. But they're your birthrights. And all of them lift you up, raise you up, and give you more ownership over your own life. And that's what this whole extraordinary thinking thing is about. Choice. Being able to have the power in your life to make the choices that are life-giving to you and not life-taking, life-sustaining and not life-depleting. Things that bring you joy and not misery. Things that bring you goodness and not badness. Things that bring you positivity and not negativity. It's all within your control. You maintain everything. Your subconscious mind looks at you and goes, Captain of the ship, what are the orders? And I have a video on my channel called Life is the Waiter at the Table. And I definitely suggest, in fact, I'm going to put it up here, and I definitely suggest that you take a look at that. I also suggest you go in and look at all of the information on Love Beyond Compare. There's some samples and of the book, you know, audio samples and things like that. It's all going to be supportive of you. So till next time, take good care, be good to you, and stay well. Bye-bye.